Welcome back, everybody, to Midtown TV. I'm your host, Jesse Miller. Welcome to our studio audience. Thank you guys for coming and joining us. Welcome to our millions and billions of internet viewers. Thank you for catching us. Today we're coming to you live on YouTube. You can also catch us on our homepage, midtownvideo.com. We're embedded, got the YouTube stream live going there. And as we've been recommending to our customers, starting next week, we will be streaming on a private CDN. So maybe you've purchased a webcasting studio for Midtown Video and we said, well, if you want to avoid the free services that post ads on your stream and you want a private CDN to embed on your website, that's where you can expect us next month. And if you need something between now and then, be sure to call us up. We'll get you hooked up. Cameras, switchers, graphics, encoders, and of course, your own private CDN so you can stream on the internet without ads. Why are we here today? Well, earlier this month, Fernando and I represented Midtown Video at the National Association of Broadcasters annual convention in Las Vegas. It's enormous. They get like 200,000 people. They fill up the south, central, and north halls of the Las Vegas Convention Center. It's totally overwhelming, and not everybody made it there. So what we'd like to do is introduce our friends to the best and latest from two of the top manufacturers that were on the floor. So before we get to our friends from LiveU and Newtek, who were clearly the winners of the show, I'd like to just say hello to my traveling companion, Fernando. How you doing, Fernando?
I'm doing excellent. Had a great time with Jesse walking the floors of NAB.
That was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
It was a lot of fun.
Fernando, was there anything in particular that you wanted to really explore or look at while we were on the floor at NAB?
Esports was a theme that I wanted to do a lot of research because I'm getting involved in developing some work for a possible studio that's coming up in South Florida.
Esports is big business lately. Not only the business of esports, but now that sports gambling's become legalized, people are spending and planning to spend lots of money betting on esports. So you took some photos while we were on the floor.
Yeah, I attended some seminars. The numbers are mind-boggling. You know, there's like $20 billion industry. It's
so much so that it looks like NAB put together an entire esports experience. Tell me what's going on in this picture.
Well, they were doing some gaming experiences, you know, in this new area that they developed to promote it. They had a lot of sponsors.
Looks like that's where the e-athletes would sit.
Exactly. Actually, they're treated as athletes.
Yeah?
The Dallas Cowboys has a 7,000 square foot facility just for them, but they have access to all the training facilities that the real athletes use.
What's going on in this picture?
They're doing these guys are live commentators of the game that's going on.
So the e-athletes are virtually competing in the e-arena?
Absolutely. It's a very tense environment. They do yoga before they play games, you know. There's a lot of exercise involved in your hands and thumbs.
There is photographic evidence that Fernando and I were on the floor of NAB.
Absolutely.
Okay, we weren't at the tables the whole time, but there was a really special reunion. Can you just push into this picture for me? Our friends on the internet are catching this. If you're in here in the studio audience, just imagine we're zooming in right here. Look at that. That's our old buddy Verge. So it was a great chance to catch up and say hello to Verge. So I'm sure you're watching.
We spent a lot of time at the tables with Verge as well.
We spent most of the time on the floor with Verge. Thank you for your insight and for introducing us to the esports arena portion of NAB, Fernando. And now I would like to transition and share with you guys some of the biggest stuff coming out of one of our favorite manufacturers, and that's LiveU. So LiveU are the guys who are pushing production at home. So you send your cameras, send your crew out to the venue with LiveU encoders and leave your switcher, leave your production control room at home. How do you get this done? You get it done with cellular bonding. So the output of your camera or cameras connect to your LiveU encoder or encoders. You stick a couple of SIM cards in here, a couple of USB modems to split your HD signal across 4 or 5 mobile encoders. You use LiveU's special sauce, the LRT protocol, to have forward error correction and audio sync verification and all kinds of, special enhancements to make sure that the HD audio that leaves your camera makes it to your switcher so you can produce from home, production at home LiveU. And some of my favorite stuff coming out is that LiveU is taking advantage of the HEVC codec. HEVC, also known as H.265. And let me tell you, H.265 makes H.264 look like H.263. You can take your HD footage, and instead of having to get 6 megabits of bandwidth, push it down to 3, maybe 3.5 megabits of bandwidth, and it'll look just as good. And if you don't believe me, wait until you see Mr. Kong T live from Oklahoma appearing in our studio from home using the H.265 HEVC codec. But first, some slides. So let's see the first LiveU slide, please. The first one I want to share with you is an H.265 encoder, and here it is. It's the 300. Maybe you've used the LiveU 200 encoder. It's an AVC encoder, MPEG-4, H.264. It comes with 2 built-in SIM cards. You can add up to 2 more USB LTE modems so that you've got 4 total mobile, network access points. But then you've also got, Miss Lindsay, you've also got wired network here, and built in you've got a Wi-Fi modem. So that's already 6 different network access points. If your AT&T network coverage is only so-so, and your T-Mobile is only so-so and a half, your LAN doesn't exist, but your Wi-Fi is there, you can use those 3 active modems, combine your entire HD system, split it out over those 3 modems. Now, in the past, with H.264, you would need 6 megabits of bandwidth to get your HD signal from your encoder to your LiveU server. Now, because we've got the LU300 using H.265, it essentially cuts in half the bandwidth necessary. These things are super light. They've got HDMI and SDI, so whether you're using a badass professional camera or perhaps a GoPro or whatever else it is you're going to use, maybe you've got one of those fancy Blackmagic 4K Pocket Cinema cameras that are not in stock. You could even plug that in to this encoder, stream over the internet, put it all back together on your server, and have some pretty awesome HD signal. The next encoder that's really special is on this next slide. It's the 600 variants. Oh, look at that. Before we get to the 600 variants, let's talk about the 600 itself. If the 300 isn't enough for you, you can use the 600. 300 can give you something like 6 modems. The 600 has even more built-in SIM cards for a total of 1 million billion modems. You will never run out of bandwidth. You will never run out of bandwidth. Something else that's special about the 600, if you're not using it to stream audio and video, you find yourself in a remote location with no internet, you can use LiveU's data bridge option to turn this thing into a 25 megabit per second internet hotspot. Plug in your laptop, provide network connectivity to your production team in the remote jungles of somewhere covered by cell phone coverage. LU600. Badass HEVC encoder, data bridge option, lots of internal SIM cards. Now, let's look at the rack-mounted 610 variants. Okay, what if you're out there and you said, Jesse, I know I'm doing mobile production, but it's not so mobile that I'm using a backpack. It's so much production heavy that I'm dragging my rack-mounted production flight pack with me. Well, I'd say great. It's a good thing you've got your rack-mounted production flight pack with you, because I can give you some rack-mounted HEVC encoders. Why would you need something like this? Say you're doing 5-camera coverage of a soccer match or football if you're watching from another country. You bring your rack populated with one LiveU 610 for each of your cameras. You set your cameras up around the field wherever you need them, behind the goals, at the 50-yard line, at center pitch. You run your SDI cables back from the cameras to your rack where all your rack-mounted encoders are. Maybe you need intercom, and your rack-mounted intercom goes into the same spot. Maybe you want a UPS so that when power goes down, you can still encode. That goes in the rack. So rather than having a single guy with a single backpack, single encoder, you can start stacking up multiple encoders. Perhaps you're actually producing from home, right? Perhaps you want to set up your own private studio because you're a big shot economist and you're always appearing on CNN, but rather than going to your local studio, you want to have your home studio and you want the ability to appear live on any of the broadcast networks. Well, they all have LiveU servers in their control rooms. So rather than having this portable style encoder, you get this rack mount style encoder, install it in your desk, and with the flip of a switch, you can go live to any of the broadcast networks waiting to receive your signal. A lot of uses for rack-mounted encoders. If you run out of ideas, give me a call. I will help you out with some, and then we will provide them for you. Before we before we leave that slide, I want to share with you that the 610 comes in 4 variants. Okay, mostly we're talking about the network-only, right, Wi-Fi and LAN version of the 610, or network with internal SIM cards. Internal SIM cards are great when you're not plugging in a network cable. The other 2 variants of the 610 are, again, you know, whether you just want network connection or you want network plus SIM cards, but in 4K. And 4K, pretty hot right now. You know how I feel about 4K. It makes 2K look like 1K. Point being, LiveU is leading the charge. Not everybody's coming out with their 4K stuff yet, but LiveU is already taking 4K output from your cameras. Let's see the next slide. Speaking of 4K output from your cameras, you've got the option of going 4 times 3G SDI or 1 times 12G SDI. So, you know, once you've decided to go with 4K resolution, the next question on everybody's mind is, how are you going to transport that signal? Is it going to be HDMI? Is it going to be, you know, 4 times 3K, 1 times 12K? Point being, all of those variants are available in the 4K encoders from LiveU. If you are going to stream in 4K, you're pretty much going to have to stream in HEVC, in H.265, because of the incredible bandwidth needs of 4K video. So when you're streaming HD video over 4K, you could probably get away with 3.5 megabits per second. If you're going to stream 4K video, even at HEVC, you want to be pushing between 6 and 8 megs. 6 and 8 megabit per second bandwidth. So, let's go back 1 slide for me. That might mean you need the 610 4KM variant. That's the 4K HEVC encoder that adds to the LAN and Wi-Fi internal SIM cards, internal LTE modems. So far we're topping out at 4G. I'm sure LiveU has something special in mind for the 5G. You know, once we get our 5G infrastructure in place, I'm sure LiveU is going to help us take advantage of that. All right, for this next set of slides, it's not so much hardware, it's software. And so to help us talk about LiveU's new software updates in LiveU Central 8.0, I would like everybody to please welcome from LiveU, from Oklahoma, Mr. Kong T. Welcome, Kong. How you doing?
Pretty good. How about you guys?
We're doing great. Thank you for asking. So I got to share with you, Kong, you look fabulous. You look fantastic.
Well,
I mean, it's clear, and you kind of look like television right now. Usually, you know, we're on the internet. Most of our internet production looks like internet, but you look like TV, man. How are you doing, and how are you coming to us?
I am using our LU300, using the cellular modems to bond together to deliver the signal to your server that's located in your studio over there.
That's exceptional. That's really good stuff. So Kong's on an HEVC encoding LU300 using only cellular modems, or do you have some Wi-Fi? Do you have some LAN?
I wanted to just use the modems for this because, you know, that's what a lot of people want to see is the reliability of the modems. With this HEVC, we're able to deliver the content in high-quality video.
Great trick. I love it, Kong. Thank you so much. So help me through this. I am familiar with LU Central, you know, 1.0 and 2.0, and I used 4.0, but even 7.0 I've got some experience with. Tell me what I'm missing. What's the newest, latest, greatest stuff in 8.0?
The newest, latest, greatest stuff is there are some things like two-way IFB.
Oh, we've got a slide on that. We got a slide on that. Let me pull that up.
Oh, okay.
There we are. Two-way IFB will be the first one. There we are. Two-way IFB.
Two-way IFB.
So how are you and I communicating?
That's how we're communicating. Right now, we are getting one-way IFB to the device, but with the release of 8.0, I will also be able to talk back through this headphone line, through the device, back into your office. Right now, we are going one way to the device. I have my headphone, and then you're hearing me through the actual camera itself.
Outstanding.
But
Let me put a
IFB, the news people will really like that, or anybody that uses TalkBack.
Let me put a spin on that. Let's go to Lindsay for a second. Right here, you'll see that there's a headset icon with a little 3.5 millimeter jack. Now, that's not just your standard TRS 3.5 millimeter jack. That's a 4-pole TRRS jack. So your Apple headphones or any other headphones that have 4 conductors, you know, left ear, right ear, microphone, and ground, will be able to plug into this device. In our server, in our rack room at Midtown Video, we've got an XLR to USB interface. So we're taking a mix bus off of the console. We're taking a mix bus with my microphone into this XLR USB interface so that Kong, using the headphone output of his LiveU HEVC LU300 encoder, he's got his headphones plugged into the jack, and he's listening to my IFB, my internal foldback program audio out of this bus into my XLR to USB encoder, into the server, over the network, to his encoder, out the headphone jack, into his headphones. What's missing is, because we're only on LU Central 7.0, he can't talk back through this. So I'm only hearing him through his camera mic, and then we've got that on a speaker in the audience. But you might imagine that both the camera operator and the talent will need to communicate with the control room when they're doing remote production. So in the next iteration of LU Central Cloud 8.0, Kong's going to be able to use the built-in headset microphone on his headset to speak back to us in a secret channel that my audience wouldn't hear. So right now, if we do anything messing up, Kong, they're all going to hear us. So try to keep it tight. Let's see the next slide. The next feature I'd love your input on, Mr. T, is logos. A logo insertion through LiveU Cloud Central. Tell me what I can do now.
Okay, so with the LiveU device, now we're adding a graphic feature to it, to where you can add a static graphic to whichever location on the screen that you want. When you start transmitting it, it will embed that logo through an RTMP feed or an SDI feed. We have some more advanced graphics, but this one is what a lot of people use. They just wanted to brand their video cast with a simple bug.
Awesome. I love it. Let me see the next slide, Mr. Adrian. Okay. All right. So we know how many modems there might be in an encoder. You could plug in your LAN cable, you could plug in your Wi-Fi cable, or you could use these data plans that are charging you by the gigabyte. Internal SIM cards, USB, LTE modems. In the past, I mean, LiveU told me that they would give me optimized spend in my encoding, but do I have any new control in LiveU Central and LU Central Cloud 8.0?
We have what we call least cost bonding. We've always had it, but we kind of made it better.
Nice.
We went ahead and allowed you to prioritize your network connection, your wireless, and your cellular modems. We can also set to where if it drops below a bandwidth, the next connection takes over and picks up automatically without losing a hiccup on the picture. Sweet. This way, you can save on your data plan if you have an Ethernet or Wi-Fi connection to your unit itself.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And I'm just going to pause here for a quick second, Kong, because I know we've got, I mean, checking the stats, it looks like there's about billion people on the internet. If you guys are watching and you have if you've got a keyboard in front of you, we do have Mr. Kevin Sprague in the studio audience accepting questions in the chat room. Live studio audience, apart from having access to all of the refreshments out there, also have the ability to ask us questions in person. If they throw up their hands, we're going to stop, make sure that we address their questions. But don't feel left out. If you're one of the millions and billions of internet viewers, you can always type your questions in the chat room. All right? So, Kong, I'm excited about least cost bonding because, you know, I like to prioritize my LAN stream. Sometimes I feel like my LAN connection is stronger than my mobile connections. It doesn't just have to be about cost, right?
Correct. We're going for the most stable connection that we can, and we'll offload the balance of the signals to whichever route is the best for us.
Okay, and then here comes a big one. This next slide is something that I think we've been waiting for a long time. You know, you can take a laptop into an environment and run a stream test to get a sense of the available bandwidth. But now you can actually test speed from your encoder to the specific decoder that you have assigned in LU Central Cloud. Tell me a little bit about this, Mr. Kong.
So what we have now is on the encoder side, the LU300 or the 600, we can run a speed test to the actual server that it's going to transmit to. Whether the server's in New York or LA, wherever the location might be, we can run the test from the encoder to that server and kind of give you a picture of when you start streaming how good the signal is going to be.
And is it like an aggregate?
It's a lot helpful for the remote locations.
Is that an aggregate of all of the modems, or can we get any more granular than that?
It's going to tell you which modems are performing the best, and kind of just go aggregate as far as the bandwidth is, just to make sure that we're going to have enough 3.6 on the LU300 and 4.2 on the LU600 to achieve optimal picture.
Awesome. So per modem speed test, one of my favorite features in LU Central 8.0. We're going to take a quick pause here and go to Kevin with a question coming in from the internet.
George asks, when will these features be available?
That's a really good question. So do you want to take that one, Kong? Do you know when LU Central 8.0 is live?
Yes, we are shooting for May, maybe mid-May or late May, to deploy the 8.0 itself. You'll need to get the LU Central updated, and then your server and your encoder as well needs to be upgraded, and all these features will be enabled.
I got to tell you, if you've ever spoken with LiveU's tech support on the phone, so if you've ever interfaced with LiveU at all, I know you've spoken to their support on the phone, because that's like a main driver of their solutions. They are awesome. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's broadcast support. And everybody that answers the phone over there knows exactly how to solve your problems. I've been on the phone with them a lot, and they kick ass. So you know, you hear the word software update, you might tighten your sphincter a little bit, but I can tell you it's a fun thing to do. They guide you through it, and then from then on out until your next phone call, you're looking forward to a support call with LiveU. So at this point, I want to say thank you, Mr. T. Please stick around in our I guess this is a mobile, a virtual, a remote. Stick around. Keep your encoder running. We may bring you back in if the chat room fires off a question that we can't handle in the studio. Is that cool?
All right, that sounds great. I'll be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So as everybody knows, our next segment is going to have a lot to do with our friends from San Antonio, Newtek. But there's an easy bridge to bring us from LiveU to Newtek, and the answer is NDI. So NDI, Network Data Interface, Network Device Interface. Thank you, Alex. We got Alex here from Newtek, all the way from not quite San Antonio, but he traveled to be here, and we appreciate it. So Network Device Interface is this protocol that's been adopted by tons of manufacturers. Panasonic puts it in their PTZ cameras. BirdDog puts it in their encoders and decoders. Our friends at tally-lights.com have a tally box interface that eats NDI for breakfast. And now you can benefit from the NDI protocol when using LiveU products. So what do I mean by that? Well, you might not have known this. It might have seemed to you like Kong was appearing on our server in the next room over an SDI cable. But you'll be surprised to know we only have a network cable connecting this TriCaster to that LiveU 2000 server. So the LU2000 servers all have NDI output. If you're using, say, a 4 SDI input TC1 and you've run out of cameras because you've got 4 SDI slots occupied, you can bring in your remote at-home production, remote reporters. You can bring your remote reporters into your production over the network using NDI, which is really cool. And do you know who I learned that from? You got any pictures for me? It'll be the last one in the LiveU set. Last one in the LiveU set. Yeah, this guy, Dr. Andrew Cross. I bumped into Dr. Cross at the Panasonic booth where he was giving a 45-minute or maybe a 15-minute speech on what else? NDI. It's really exciting. He's like, yeah, you've got tally and control and power and video and audio all over this same cable, and it's NDI, and it is a special thing. It's really cool. It helps production. It makes things efficient. Fewer cables to run, and look at the brilliant guys behind it. Really exciting. So speaking of NDI, I'd like to now step into our Newtek set of slides. Moments later, we're going to talk about premium access, and I've got a special guest to help deliver those important points. But first, I want to tell you guys about the latest TriCaster that I am excited about. It is the TriCaster TC410 Plus. They've retired the TC410, which you may remember was sort of the stripped-down version of the 460, which made the 455 look like a 450. The 410 had 4 SDI inputs and 4 SDI outputs and no analog, component, or composite, which is great. It helped us, you know, it helped everybody recognize that this analog sunset has already happened, and if you're not producing an SDI, I guess you're producing an HDMI, but you're definitely not producing a composite or component anymore, and if you are, please call your friends at Midtown Video. We have the converters. Or we'll just get you the upgrades. We'll get you going digitally. So you might already know the TC1. It's what we use. It's what we've adopted as our at-home encoding, streaming, graphics, clip player, switching chroma keyer. The TC1 does a lot of stuff, but some people say it does a little too much stuff. Enter the TC410 Plus. Let's talk about some stuff. Let's see the next slide, please. SDI inputs. Like I said, there are 4 SDI inputs on the TC1, which is great for 4-camera production, and using NDI, you can expand that to many more inputs. We'll talk about that in a second. What's different about the TC410 Plus is, yes, 4 inputs, but no 4 routable outputs. You get 2 routable outputs. But what, you know, they're not going to make a new hardware board. There's still 4 connections, so each of those 2 routable outputs is a 1x2 DA. Still 4x4, right? But only 2 routable outputs. Next differences between the TC1 and the 410 Plus is inputs with a quotation mark around them. Why do I call them inputs? Well, I only have 4 SDI inputs. I have no HDMI inputs, and like I said, definitely no analog inputs, but I've got lots of NDI slots. So if I've got a PTZ camera that speaks NDI, even though I've used 4 SDI inputs, I can ingest the video and audio from this PTZ camera over NDI. Similarly, if I have a remote reporter like Kong in Oklahoma. Oh, we forgot to make fun of, he had an Oklahoma Thunder banner up there. This is heat country. We'll get back to that later. I should have brought that up when he was live. Point being, if you've run out of SDI inputs, you've got up to 12 additional, let's call them NDI inputs on the TC1, and only 4 additional inputs on the TC410 Plus. TC410 Plus. Really exciting. They said, we love the TC1. It has too much stuff. Take out some stuff. Let's see the last slide. That's really what they took out, was the dollar signs. You were paying $20,000 for a TC1, $10,000 for a TC410 Plus. I've got a question coming in from the studio audience. Please, we've got Mr. Alex Udell from Newtek. Do I have something wrong?
No, I just wanted to mention one of the big differentiators, obviously, is TC1 is still our entry point for 4K production.
Okay.
And the 410 Plus is 1080 60p.
Thank you very much. If you want to do 1080 60p production, you're in luck. TC410 Plus is going to take care of you, and it's going to take care of you at a low, low price of $10,000. So that's pretty exciting. If you find yourself, you know, outgrowing your switcher only, say you need to add character generator, say you need to add virtual sets, say you need to add DDR, clip playback, or internet streaming all from the same box. You're ready to leave behind your $2,000 switcher. You're not ready yet for a $20,000 switcher. Enter the TC410 Plus. 10 grand. Pretty sweet. If you want it with the control surface, it's 15 grand. And if you want it with 4K capability, 4x4 routable SDI connections, and 16 inputs, then you need a TC1. It's very simple. So we're excited about the new hardware. There are other pieces of new hardware coming out from Newtek, like their Spark Plus and their PTZ Plus cameras. But what's even more exciting than the hardware you can buy is the software you can subscribe to. Is it month to month, or do you have to get annual subscriptions?
You do month to month.
All right, so if you find an opportunity to use some of these really cool features we're about to offer, and you only want to try them out for a month or so, there's no commitment. I think it's like $100 a month. There's a NAB special going on right now that's $100 a month. And so to take us through our 2 favorite premium access software subscription features, please welcome live from Miramar via Skype on our TC1 Newtek's George DiGhiero.
Hi, Jesse.
Hi,
How are you
George.
guys?
Look at those fancy graphics.
And what about our new studios in South Florida? What do you
That
think
blows
about
me
that?
away. That blows me
But,
away.
So maybe not that big, but well, who knows?
Very nice. Very nice, George.
So what I'm going to be talking about is 2 of the new features that we have in Premium Access. Obviously, there are much more than that, but it would take quite a long time to go over all of them. So we're going to focus on automation and vertical sessions. So we can do vertical video. So first, we're going to talk about automation. So with automation, always you start with a script. So every time that you're gonna, write a show, you're gonna start with a basic script. And what better tool and easiest tool to use than Microsoft Word? So with Microsoft Word, what we have done is the following. You start typing your script like you would always do for any show that you might be working on. But notice something interesting here. You see that in the right side, we have comments. These are typical comments that you can add in Word. And in
George,
this
I
one
just want to interrupt for a second because the
Yes.
text is a little small for my studio audience to see, but I want to share with you. So he's got a little bit of highlighted text, and on the right-hand side is a comment, and those comments are like, take VS1, macro title on, macro title off.
Exactly.
So it's like English versions of TriCaster commands. So
exactly.
take it away from here, George.
It utilizes natural language, so you don't have to specifically use, certain type of language in order for the system to understand. So what we do then, we come to the TriCaster, and notice that now we have a new tab. It's called Automation. It's right here. And what we're going to do is, this is going to allow us to load the script. You see, this is simply a Word document, which now I'm going to load into the system. Now, the system is loading this, and not only is going to bring the text of the script, because we have added a teleprompting function to the system as well. So not only we're going to do the automation side, so the system is going to be taking the inputs and switching the sources and bringing the graphics, but also is going to deliver a telestration within the system. So if we go to any of the inputs and I go into the TC1, now you can see that we have teleprompter out within the system. This is quite powerful. So now I'm going to do a dual screen, and I'm going to start. So everything that you see within the TriCaster that is on blue is going to start triggering the macro. So you see now it says I'm Jorge Diguero, and if you look at the program, the DSK has been on. Now next one is taken out. Now graphics are being played out. I'm not touching the system at this moment. Everything is being done through automation. Graphics are coming out, and every single thing that is happening here is triggered by the macros and the automation written in the script in Word. So one very interesting thing here is that every time that the system, we want to add a command, we just need to highlight the text and tell the system what we want the TriCaster to do. Notice right now under the teleprompter tab is a red line that is moving forward. This is because now it's playing a video, and it's telling us when the video is going to end. It's 10 now. Teleprompter keeps going, and now it's going to go into a show end, and it's going to play out an animation at that point. Now I'm going to go back.
That's crazy, George.
It's
all the technical directors are shaking in their boots here.
yeah.
It can't be that easy.
Absolutely.
Where can I find the list of commands that I would use in that right column of notes?
Well, the great thing is, obviously, we are going to, in the documentation, provide the typical natural language that you can use.
Okay.
But as an easy way just for you to know, if you name a camera, for example, Jesse, and another camera, you name it Jorge, and I'm talking basically here within input 1, input 2, you change that name. It's as simply as then make the reference, take Jorge, take Jesse, and the AI engine that is built into this tool is going to know what sources to bring in.
And
the
Jorge,
same thing.
Speaking of naming things, Jesse, there is a second very sought-after feature in Premium Access that had its origins right here at Midtown Video when we were doing a top-secret special project. It was a collaboration with Facebook doing some live streaming, and they were very concerned that, not everybody knows that video looks like this. People thought that video might look like this. And so tell me about the latest features that we're naming Jesse.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that definitely everybody should know. I mean, Jesse was a pioneer on driving us to do this work. And it's about not longer 16:9 video is what people utilize, okay? So what I'm gonna show you now, I'm gonna exit this session. So I'm gonna go to a new one. And if I go to a new session, there is something very, very powerful going on. Notice here, not only I have NTSC PAL, 4K, HD, SD, but now we have different aspect ratios. The actual session can be on whatever aspect ratio you want. And even within a typical 16:9, I want you to notice something here. This session could be 3840 by 1080. This is double wide HD. So we are not longer with the system constrained to a 16:9 for multiple projector outputs, video walls inside the studios. So here I can go to a 1:1 aspect ratio, and of course we can do a vertical session. So if I go into open sessions and I have one here named Midtown 9:16, now the session is going to launch on a 9:16, and every single source is going to follow that aspect ratio. But the very important thing to understand is that even though it's displayed on 9:16, every source remains their original aspect ratio. Let me show you what that means. If I'm here on ME1, okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more into the outputs. And let me make this a little bigger. You see that within the ME, and I'm going to zoom out just a bit so people can understand what's happening. You see that here I have a positioner. So I'm moving the source, but if I zoom out, notice that the source is retaining the original aspect ratio. So I can either do cropping if I want for the source. I simply can do scaling, like in this case, position it to whatever place I want. Now, let's say I have a graphic, and this graphic, I can position it in whatever place I want. I can scale it. You see that now I have a third layer. This third layer, again, I can scale it down and create a more, complete separate section within that video. And now I can come to my fourth layer, and this one could be a graphic. So I'm going to put it as a background, and now I have real-time vertical composition directly coming out of the system. This just is something quite unique. And also, because we are that cool, we are going to allow you to output these even already completely new aspect ratios. We are going to give you the option to also do a rotation, flip, and also output whatever section of that video that you want. So this is quite revolutionary.
George, I noticed you got 90 degrees and 270 degrees.
Yes.
Are we going clockwise or counterclockwise?
Clockwise.
Okay, that clears it up.
In
Thank you very much,
that
George. Listen, I'm excited about vertical video, not because I believe it's a legitimate format, but because enough people out there are using it that we really need to give them the tools to at least look somewhat pro. So these are two of about 8 billion features that you get when you hook up with Newtek's premium access. This is something where you call up Midtown Video, you say, hey, I want some premium access. We figure out if you want it month to month, or if you want to get some kind of, there's a price break if you buy 12 months at a time. So we figure out what you need, how you're going to use it, and then Midtown Video will take your order, get you a coupon so you can download the software from the store and have an easy transaction. And if you don't believe me, just ask Alex here. What do you got to say?
I just wanted to mention, too, that at last NAB, when we introduced premium access for the first time, it really was relegated specifically to the TC1 platform in the VMC.
Okay.
As of this year, earlier this year, we released Advanced Edition 3 for legacy platforms. So as long as your system is compatible with Advanced Edition 3, as of this year, now premium access is available across all platforms.
How far back do we have to? Can we go?
We have a system checker that you run prior to placing an order to make sure that the system you have is compatible with Advanced Edition 3.
Where can I find the Newtek system checker?
On the Newtek website, probably right off of the page talking about Advanced Edition 3.
Awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome. All right, so as I mentioned, really cool hardware coming up. It's the TC410 Plus, the entry version of a TC1 if you need 1080p 60. We also have some really cool features in premium access, and if your system can handle Advanced Edition 3.0, then it can handle premium access. And I think there's an NDI 4.0 coming out, which does incredible things not only for transport, but also video quality coming up. As we mentioned, we're using NDI in the studio today to bring the audio and video feed from Kong, from Oklahoma, from our server to our TriCaster. NDI, it's in our production tools. As usual, if you guys have any questions or if you want to get your hands on any of this stuff, give us a call. Send us some email. Midtown Video speaks fluent Newtek, fluent LiveU, and LiveU speaks fluent NDI, which is really interesting. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you to my studio audience for coming out. Before we go, we've got a question from, or maybe even a comment from Scott.
Between now and May 31st, if you, the LU300, we are giving away 3 free months of data, no matter which data plan you would pick from LiveU, 3 months of data if purchased before May 31st. And if you've got an LU200 or an LU500 and you want to go to HEVC, we're also offering a trade-in. Just give your folks at Midtown Video a call, and we'll work that out with you.
Trade in your AVC encoders for HEVC encoders. That's awesome. So they are NAB specials. It's one of the I guess the second best thing that comes out of NAB is all the cool new gear. The best thing that comes out of NAB are all the NAB specials. So certainly our manufacturers are encouraging us to act quickly to grab up all this awesome new stuff. Once again, studio audience, you guys can't do this show without a studio audience. You are the absolute best. Thank you for coming and making it out here. Second best are our millions and billions of internet viewers. We love it when you guys watch. We especially love it when you say hello in the chat room and provide us your awesome, interesting questions. Our crew today, top-notch, not pictured because he's filming the largest herbal growing field in Miami, Florida, is Gustavo Acosta, who swears he's not participating. Matt Leone, Lindsay Kogan on cameras, Alex Girola on audio, our technical director, Adrian Allen, proud new parent. Thank you once again, everybody, for coming out and for making our show so awesome. For all of your friends here at Midtown Video, I am Jesse Miller. This has been totally awesome. Thank you for coming.